This is America on the Road, winner of the International Automotive Media Conference Gold Medal Award for Radio, and now in its 24th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world, and we have some information about the brand that used to be called the Standard of the World coming up in the show. America on the Road is brought to you by drivingtoday.com and the Coalition for Vehicle Choice. We invite you to log on to drivingtoday.com anytime you'd like information about driving, because that's what there is on drivingtoday.com. I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague, back with us after a week off. Chris, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me and welcoming back to the world of, the outside world, really, because I've been inside for the past 2 weeks almost straight.
Right. You had a little illness in your family, and I'm glad to hear that recovery is imminent. And you're based in Maine, where the snow has been falling and it's 30 degrees and all of those things. How are you feeling?
Winter is fast approaching, despite my biggest objections. We're starting to see some ice skim on top of our ponds, and it'll be a nice Thanksgiving indoors, it appears.
Well, I'm in Southern California, where the weather is a bit warmer, although we've had a cool spell where it's been in the 60s and is liable to be in the 60s all week. This is Thanksgiving week, and a belated happy Thanksgiving to all of you who are listening on America on the Road. We have two very special guests for you on this show. Greg Kopf is an expert in overlanding, and he's the brand representative for CarID.com. We're going to talk to him about overlanding. Are you a fan of overlanding, my friend Chris?
I am, although I will admit to being, I will say, an absolute novice on the subject, but I think the appeal of it is very strong for me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's especially cool when other people are footing the bill, and that's the way I've experienced it. Lauren Fix is our other guest. She also goes by the title The Car Coach. That is a trademark title that she holds. She's a certified mechanic. She's a member of the North American Car of the Year jury, as I am. And we'll talk with her about getting your car prepared for winter. I better hurry up if you're in Maine, right? Winter is more than a bonus.
Late if you're in Maine.
Right. So that's going on. In the car review segment, Chris will take an expert look, because that's what he does, at the all-new Kia K5. That's the replacement for the Optima. What's your initial take on the K5, Chris?
I think it's a neat little car. It's got some quirks, but it's definitely a contender in this segment.
Yeah, so we'll have a lengthier review in the next segment. I will tell you about my recent drive in the significantly revised 2021 Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat Redeye. Yes, sirree, Bob. That's a long name for a pretty big car, actually, that has 797, yes, you heard that right, 797 horsepower. So I'll tell you about my drive in that. It was in the Charlotte, North Carolina environs, and down into South Carolina for a little bit. So I'll tell you about that. Before we do that, though, let's go to the news. What do you have in terms of news for us, Mr. Teague?
So this is a story I've been following for a couple of days. Cadillac is making a big move towards electrifying, if I can speak, its entire lineup, or a good portion of its lineup. And they're boosting their investment in the EVs and autonomous vehicles by 35% through 2025. And what that means for dealers is that they've got to get on board with some of this stuff. And that means training their staff, updating their facilities to handle chargers and whatnot. And GM and Cadillac have said to the dealers, if you're not on board with this, or if you're not ready to make the shift, we will buy you out so that you don't have to get on board with our project here. So they're offering what is estimated to be between $300,000 and $500,000 to dealers to buy out, basically, who don't feel like they're going to be able to meet the requirements to sell EVs and then eventually some of these more autonomous heavy vehicles. So really interesting move from Cadillac. They have offered different packages over the years, but I think this is, at least according to Automotive News, the biggest. So really interesting move from them, and shows their commitment to getting everybody in the company on board, even their franchise dealers.
Well, it's interesting, too. I mean, for years and years and years, Cadillac, as a bunch of divisions and a bunch of different companies, have wanted maybe to thin the herd a little bit of their dealers and make it a smaller group, maybe a more committed group. And so this is a way to go about doing that, maybe a bit of a clandestine way to go about doing it. $300,000 or $400,000 seems a lot of money to you and me, but for a dealer and for a franchise, that's not a whole ton of money. And so GM might be getting out easy for those dealers who opt for that. It's interesting. Many dealers, especially Cadillac dealers in smaller towns and medium-sized cities, are associated with other dealers, or Cadillac is one of the brands in the same showroom with other GM brands. And they might say, oh, okay, we'll take that $400,000 to not sell Cadillacs anymore. At the same time, I think for Cadillac, those are exactly the places where Cadillac probably is most likely to do well, as opposed to the big urban centers where imports are more likely. Imports and Tesla, which kind of acts like an import, it's imported from California, I guess, are more likely to do well. So maybe a bit of a double-edged sword for Cadillac and General Motors. Maybe they're weeding out some dealers that they'd be well advised to keep.
Yeah, I think it's specifically, for me at least, it's interesting because of the structure that we have up here in Maine and northern and small rural towns all over the country, actually, where, you mentioned the small town dealer that have 2 or 3 brands under their roof. I think that, some of them, this automotive news story that I pulled up the other day is saying, for low volume dealers, that $300,000 to $400,000 could be multiple years of new vehicle profits for them. So that might be a good incentive to kind of, like you said, trim the fat a little bit. So I'll be watching.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, dealers are in it for the long haul. And so a few years of profit, or even if it's 10 years of profit, I mean, they want to have those brands. And many of them have had, say, the Cadillac brand for 50 years, for 100 years. So it's interesting that, and we'll track that to see how it sorts out. Well, here's another story. McLaren. We like McLaren Automotive, certainly. They have really cool cars these days. And Bruce McLaren was kind of a racing hero of mine back in the day. And he has nothing to do with these cars, of course, because he's long since passed. But they have a new plug-in hybrid that's coming our way, and they have finally named it. Before, it just had a code name, P16, which is kind of so-so. But the name for it is Artura, Artura. And some details, not too many, but some details have been revealed about it. Like Cadillac, McLaren wants to be 100% electrified, maybe not completely EV, but have vehicles like this that are hybridized. That's a place to find free power, for one thing. So I think a lot of brands are glomming onto that. But we will see what happens with that. It's going to be, the vehicle will be built on a new architecture called the McLaren Carbon Lightweight Architecture. I like that. My dad was an architect, so it's always amusing to me that cars have architecture as opposed to just a structure or a chassis or something like that. But that's what's going on at McLaren. Pretty good-looking car, said to have a twin-turbo V6 engine along with the electric motor that makes it a hybrid. So we'll look for that.
Yeah, that's their first, right? I believe that they've relied on V8s up until now.
Yeah, absolutely true. So kind of cool. We'll see what happens with that. Do you have some other news for us, my friend?
No, just a funny thing about the architecture comment. I was trying to figure out the name of it. The Rolls-Royce architecture of luxury was what I was trying to summon in that conversation. A little late now for the joke, but there we go.
It's okay. Better never than late. No, better late than never for some of these jokes.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I think that's enough news for this time around. And when we come back, we will be doing some vehicle reviews with some pretty cool cars. The Kia K5, cool enough, absolutely. And then, wow, I think I was blowing people away with this 797 horsepower Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat Redeye. Yes, all those names are attached to this car. Dodge, Charger, SRT, Hellcat, and Redeye. So all will be reviewed in the next segment. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you. Stay with us. We'll be right back, right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. This is Jack Nerad back with you, and we are so pleased to have Chris Teague, our co-host, back with us this week. Chris, you were driving, not talking, but you were driving. Maybe you were talking while you were driving. the all-new Kia K5. Why don't you tell us about that car? It's getting a lot of play, certainly, in the media right now.
It is. I always get a kick out of the TV commercials. I don't know if you guys have them on the West Coast. We have the all-new turbocharged Kia K5 commercials all over every channel here. But all around, a really neat little car. I got it last week, just gave it back this morning. Let's see. This is the GT line, which is not the upcoming, soon-to-be top-of-the-line GT model. This had a 180 horsepower, 1.6 liter turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine. It also makes 195 pound-feet of torque through an 8-speed automatic transmission. This is not a CVT, so it's definitely on my radar as being a cool little car. All around a peppy driver. So around town, more than enough power to get up and go. One thing that I've noticed with Kia and with Hyundai, specifically with their 8-speed transmissions, is that sometimes the dial-in amount of takeoff power that you want is not always exact. So you either have a little bit too much, so you're kind of, for my kids' sake, throwing their heads back in the seat, or there's not enough, and you're kind of wondering if you should give it a little bit more. And that's true here too. And so that's kind of the only real, beef that I would have with the powertrain. Throttle response could be a little bit better, but it is absolutely a sporty and zippy feeling little car that still maintains a good ride quality despite being very lively and tossable around the corners. This being the GT line, it has a red leatherette interior, so that's very, very bright and loud interior, very sporty looking seats, nice bolsters, very comfortable.
Now, is that something you like, Chris, or is that something that, I always have a difference of opinion with, say, my wife over red interiors or, think kind of bright colored interiors. She doesn't dig them. I kind of do. What's your take?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but the execution here was, I'll say, decent. So this is an option for the GT line trim. It's almost like a blood red. It's a darker red. It's not kind of in your face red, but it works well. The outside of this car was, and I don't know the exact color name, but a dark grayish blue color, and it had a panoramic sunroof. So the black roof combined with the kind of muted exterior color worked well with the bright red inside. So no real complaints there. I mean, I would probably choose black if I were buying it, but that's just personal choice there. This particular car had wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and came along with all the quirks that those features bring. Sometimes it connected properly, sometimes it did not. The stereo, I believe, was a Harman Kardon stereo. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but very nice sounding stereo, easy to use infotainment. I've praised Kia and Hyundai both many times for easy to use, very simple menus, not a lot of fluff. Everything seems to work exactly as you want it to be doing at the moment that you need it to be. But on the other flip of that coin, the other side of that coin, some people will say it's too simplistic, it's too cartoony, it's too juvenile. But I think that definitely works in its favor, especially when you're driving and you don't want to dig through 50 menus to get to where you want to go. With kids in the back seat, myself, 6 feet tall, Jack, there it is.
Hooray.
Car seats.
We found Waldo.
Fit fine in the back seat. This is kind of that coupe shape that the Kia Stinger has. So the roof slopes pretty drastically, or dramatically, I should say, to the trunk. But even so, there was plenty of headroom for the kids to slide in and out of their car seats. Didn't have a lot of trouble fitting them behind myself or anyone else in the front seats. So all around, the car's got comfort. The car's got some zip to it. It looks great. I think it's a very handsome car. A few squibbles or whatever squabbles with the tech, and maybe with the transmission on takeoff, but otherwise I think it's a very solid effort from Kia, especially for a first generation car.
Absolutely, and for something like $30,000, it's a lot of performance. So pretty cool.
I agree.
I would think. Well, I was driving something that was absolutely so wild that it requires multiple names. Many names, and we referred to them in the previous segment. It is the 2021 Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat Redeye. Not just the SRT Hellcat or the Redeye or any combination thereof, but it's all of those things. And the headline, of course, is 797 horsepower. Yes, 797 horsepower, which makes it the most powerful and fastest mass-produced sedan in the world, at least according to FCA, to Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. The amazing thing to me about this vehicle, and I've driven many very, very powerful cars over the course of my lengthy career. And a lot of times they're just a handful to live with on a day-to-day basis, or there's something you don't want to live with on a day-to-day basis. But on the other hand, having driven this vehicle and kind of almost commuted in it as part of the drive. I mean, there was a track section of this, which was quite exciting, but there was also a portion where you just drove on regular roads with other civilians. This is a totally tractable, usable as a daily driver kind of car that just happens to have almost 800 horsepower. It kind of knocks you out. 707 pound-feet of torque, I might have mentioned, and it has a top speed of 203 miles an hour. When I was back at Motor Trend, this is a long time ago, and we were doing top speed tests on high-speed ovals, we had a difficult time finding vehicles that would push over, say, 180, 190 miles an hour. This was way back in the day, but we were driving some pretty fast cars. And here is a sedan that can absolutely be used for going, taking the whole family to Disneyland, and it'll go 203 miles an hour. It's just kind of blows you away.
Yeah, I drove the Challenger Hellcat Redeye a couple of years ago, and it was absolutely, just docile in the city. And then on a track, it, opens wide up, and it's total violence. So they've done a really good job blending the worlds there.
Yeah, and it's amazing that they can do that. I mean, I'll give you some particulars on the Redeye itself. It has a wide body exterior, so it has fender flares. It is 3.5 inches wider than the typical Charger is. It has big wheels and tires, as you would guess, 20-inch by 11-inch carbon black wheels. So that's pretty cool. Just a good-looking vehicle all the way around. And not only is it great in the straight line, which you would expect with 800 horsepower, but it also is very nice on the track. We were at Carolina Motorsports Park, and everybody who drove it to a person just praised the vehicle to the skies for what it was able to do out there. And it's kind of amazing what SRT has been able to do with this vehicle, given the fact that it is not only a straight line car that'll do the quarter mile in a little over 10 seconds, which is pretty amazing for a street car, but also that it is so tractable on a road course, a challenging road course. It does both of those things really well, and then you can take it to pick up the groceries. It's just and commute to work. It's just kind of nuts what they've been able to do. And making a supercharger live for a lengthy period of time is one of the things they're able to do, and that takes some doing. The boost pressure is pretty high. It's 14.5 psi. That's up from 11.6 formerly in the last go-round of this, so they're up in the ante of getting more air in there. And then they do a really good job of cooling that air, including what they call the SRT Power Chiller that actually helps cool incoming air, because you want cold, dense air to go into your supercharger, and that'll make more power. So from the inside, you would just call this a nicely finished Dodge sedan, Charger sedan, four-door, of course, 5-passenger vehicle with a lot of trunk space and good instrumentation, a lot of the Uconnect system. This is Uconnect 5 that we like so much, the latest iteration of Uconnect, and we're going to talk about that in an interview in an upcoming show. But all in all, this is one amazing car, and not just amazing from the performance, and we're all happy about performance on the track, any kind of track, but just it was the performance in day-to-day driving that was most revealing to me.
Yeah, I'm all for 800 horsepower family sedans. I cannot get enough of them in my life. I think it's amazing, like you said, what they've been able to do with the technology to keep the cars cool. So, how many people are going to take their Challenger or their Charger Redeye onto a track and run it all day and then take the kids to soccer practice? But it's completely possible, and the cars are robust, and they've been engineered to be able to do that without a hiccup. We ran the Challenger that I drove all day in September heat on a track with the air conditioner and the cooled seats on, and they there was no hiccup. So, that's what you get from SRT, and it's been great. They've been able to strap on a supercharger that's the size of like a Toyota Corolla engine and still get very tolerable daily driving characteristics. So kudos to them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it has launch assist and launch control, and at the same time, it'll hold grocery bags really well. So, and rides well. Doesn't knock you out with the. I think the adaptive damping suspension certainly helps that, of course, and makes all that happen. So, and at the price, you can spend over $100,000, I think, for one of these vehicles, but you can probably get most of the performance you want for less than that, and it just kind of blew me away. So, kudos to Dodge for doing what they do. It is certainly counter to what virtually the rest of the industry is doing. I mean, heaven knows we were just talking about EVs, although EVs have their own performance potential. But interesting stuff that we're seeing in this new age of performance. The Kia K5, very affordable performance that you were driving. And I was driving the Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat Redeye, 800 horsepower, and I loved it a lot. So what's not to like?
I agree. I would have one if I could.
Yeah. And maybe you can, at least for a week. Coming up. So when we come back, we will be doing our interview with Greg Kopf. He is an expert on overlanding. And overlanding is taking a vehicle and then launching out where there are no roads and living off the fat of the land or something like that. We advise you to bring your own water and food with you. But I don't think unless you want to eat roots and berries and large ticks, stuff like that, which doesn't sound that appealing to me. So we're going to talk to Greg about overlanding when we come back. Stay with us for that. With Chris Teague, this is Jack Nerad with you on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad back with you. And we have a fun thing to talk about with a fun guy. He seems like a fun guy anyway. I've only talked to him for seconds. But Greg Kopf is the brand ambassador at CarID.com. Is that how you pronounce that, or is there a better way to pronounce that, Greg?
No, that is correct, CarID.com.
Cool. And tell me, what does a brand ambassador do?
Well, to be honest, Jack, I get to have do a lot of fun stuff here for the business. So essentially my job is creating informative and entertaining automotive content focused around new products, how to install those products on vehicles for our potential clients.
Well, sounds terrific. And we're going to talk about overlanding. Why don't you describe for us? It might be a term that's unfamiliar to many of our listeners. What is overlanding anyway?
So overlanding is a type of off-roading, but it's essentially almost like camping in your car, and it's another outlet for people to be able to enjoy their vehicle and the outdoors at the exact same time. It's more about the journey and just really immersing yourself in Mother Nature.
Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, I've done stuff like that. I did the Land Rover Great Divide Expedition. Actually, I did both of them, and they were 20 years apart, so that shows you a little bit about how old I am. But it's super cool to go out just in the wild. You have your vehicle, you have some gear with you, and like you say, you get pretty immersed in it. So tell us what people should know about that whole thing.
Well, the great part about overlanding is it's a very entry-level way to not only get out there and explore Mother Nature, but use your vehicle as you go. And unlike other types of off-roading, like mudding or rock crawling, where you need a very specific vehicle, and to really enjoy it, sometimes you need to put quite a large investment into your vehicle to do so. Overlanding gives people the opportunity to go off-roading, have a journey, have an adventure, be a little bit more comfortable having your vehicle with you, and it's a lot more affordable and attainable, even if you're not, a master technician.
And you can kind of gauge the route to the ability of your vehicle. You understand the ability of your vehicle. And I don't think it's necessarily as challenging, say, as rock crawling or something like that, right? I mean, the idea really is just to get out into nature, maybe be away from the beaten path for days at a time, and kind of not exactly living off the land, but kind of as close to it as, 21st century people do, right?
Exactly. And I mean, as challenging as it gets is as challenging as you want it to be. I mean, one of the things I would recommend to anybody that's looking to go overlanding is to obviously research the area that you plan on going. I mean, you may have wider trails that are maybe mostly dirt and a little bit rocky that, you could take your average SUV, pickup truck, or even, a lot of the Subarus out there down those trails and not really have to worry about anything too technical. So always take a look at where you plan on going, what the conditions of the trails are like. Some may be more extreme than others. So it's all about your comfort zone as well as, the type of vehicle that you drive and how well it's set up.
Yeah, and some might be very benign for most of the route, but then there's one or two real big problem areas, and that can really throw you for a loop, can't it?
Yeah, that can certainly happen. Water crossings is one that jumps out in my mind. If there are going to be any, make sure you know where they are, how deep they can get, and the weather conditions as well. Because if you do have to deal with any kind of a water crossing and it's been, raining for the past couple of days, it's definitely something to be mindful of.
Well, tell us about taking a motorized vehicle into rugged terrain or off-road terrain. I mean, what are the parameters of that? What are the legalities of that? What can you do and not do, say, in national forests and other recreational kind of sites?
So first things first, you definitely want to check wherever you plan to go, that four-wheeling is permitted. If it is a national forest, you can just call the parks and just verify that you're allowed to do so. Most of them, it's totally fine, and most people camp out of their cars. In terms of preparing your vehicle for that, four-wheel drive is a necessity. You need to have some type of four-wheel or all-wheel drive on whatever vehicle that you're going to use. Depending on the size of the trail, if it's a little bit wider, you can use a standard full-size truck, Suburban of that nature, something a little bit larger as long as you have the room. But excellent overlanding vehicles are usually going to be something that's a little bit narrower, a shorter wheelbase. So if you do get in those tight areas, it'll be a lot easier to maneuver the vehicle throughout.
Do you think, say, an all-wheel drive vehicle like a Honda CR-V or something like that, it has all-wheel drive, but not necessarily renowned for its off-road prowess, is that something that's appropriate, or do you need something that is more of a dedicated four-wheel drive vehicle that has, two-wheel drive, maybe a transfer case, those kinds of things?
It's all about the conditions of the trails. I don't think that a CR-V would be any problem. Believe it or not, it's probably more capable than you think it is. The biggest thing that I would suggest in, let's say, upgrading a CR-V is going to be your tire choice. Now, with any vehicle, if you do plan on doing off-roading, you want to have the correct tire for the conditions. So I'd recommend a bare minimum of a good all-terrain tire, so it's going to grip on anything from mud to snow to rocks, to make sure you get the appropriate traction. Because even a CR-V, it does have an all-wheel drive system that's very capable, but only if it can gain traction. So tires is definitely a good thing to keep in mind.
Right, and certainly ground clearance and approach and departure angles are important as well, aren't they?
They are, yes, absolutely. On some vehicles, you do want to be concerned with ground clearance. Again, this goes back to tires. If you want to increase your ground clearance by a little bit, you can install a little oversized tire then from factory that may give you an inch or so. That could definitely help your approach and departure angle. Other modifications, so to speak, that you could make to a vehicle to increase that would be to replace your front and rear bumpers. A lot of off-road bumpers that are on the market are designed and angled so you have an increased approach and departure angle so you don't end up getting hung up on anything. Not to mention their construction is going to be a lot more durable than your standard bumper cover that comes with the car from the factory. They're usually made of a really thick gauge steel.
Got it. And how difficult are those for people to install?
If you have a basic set of hand tools, you can install any of these in your own driveway. Generally speaking, most of those products that are on the market are designed to bolt right onto the car. There's no real fabrication whatsoever. So between you and a friend, you can get it done this Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, depending on the friend. And, if I'm smart, I'll have the friend do most of the work.
Exactly.
What kind of gear should people put together for this kind of trip for overlanding?
Well, there's two main things to consider: gear for your vehicle and gear for yourself if you're obviously going to be camping out there. So things to keep in mind for your vehicle: tools. Always bring a basic set of tools. Even though you check the car and everything before you leave, which is also recommended, make sure it's in tip-top shape, things can always happen on the trail. whether that be, a flat tire. Make sure your spare is with you and it's inflated. A plug kit is always recommended. Some spare parts on common items that can fail, and a basic set of hand tools. Now, in terms of
what would be the common fail stuff? That's interesting to me. I'm trying to figure out exactly what I would take with me for that.
Again, it depends on the conditions of where you're going. A plug kit, like I just mentioned, is always a great thing to have. If you do end up getting something in a tire, you can be able to plug a tire on the trail without a problem. An air compressor is another thing to bring with you, so you can inflate the tires if necessary, and also have something to be able to reinflate the tires if you have to deflate them to get more traction in certain terrain. Other common failure items on, let's say, maybe some older four-wheel drive units would be like drive shaft U-joints. It seems like it could be complicated, but that's something that can be actually fixed on the side of a trail in the middle of the woods with just basic tools. Fluids are also really important. If you do end up, unfortunately, if you get yourself into maybe too deep of water and you get a little bit of water in the engine, it's not all over. You can flush that water out, change the oil right there in the trail, as long as the oil is in an approved container, so it's not going to leak anywhere, and take it with you. But those are repairs that you can perform out in the woods.
Yeah, good advice. And I'm glad I don't have to make any of those repairs today, because it sounds difficult. Yeah, so other gear. I'm sorry, I interrupted you there, Greg.
No problem. If you're camping in the woods, you have to make sure you have what you need, right? So a tent of some sort. You can certainly camp on the ground wherever you end up camping for the night, or there's a lot of really great alternatives for those people that don't necessarily want to sleep on the ground. For example, if you own a pickup truck, there's a lot of tents out there that actually mount to the top of the bed of the truck that'll keep you actually off the ground. They even make mattresses, air mattresses, that are designed to fit inside the bed of a truck, so you can stay nice, comfortable, off the ground, covered and dry. So even though it may rain, you're off the ground and you're a lot more comfortable. And of course, other items like grills, cooking utensils, fresh water, all your standard camping supplies.
Well, and they're rooftop tents too. And I, as an old tent camper who doesn't really like sleeping on the ground very much at all, I'm intrigued by these rooftop tents. Tell us a bit about those.
The rooftop tents have really taken off in the past few years, and just for that reason, for those that really don't want to sleep on the ground, or they're in an area where there may be some critters out there at night that they really don't want to become friends with. There's a ton of companies that make them, and they're designed to be supported on top of a roof rack system, on top of a vehicle, and they can generally support a large amount of weight. So 2 full-size adults can sleep in these tents, or these rooftop tents, without a problem. And they're incredibly lightweight, easy to install. Most of them out there in the market don't even require any tools. You can install them right to the top roof rack system without any tools necessary.
We're talking with Greg Kopf. He is the brand ambassador at CarID.com. And I'm curious, what is a full-size adult? What would you consider to be a full-size adult? Or 2, for that matter. What's the combined weight? Is it like 400 pounds? Is it 300 pounds? Is it 500 pounds?
Anywhere from probably 400 to 500 pounds.
Okay. And thanks for giving me a straight answer to what is a totally facetious question. I appreciate that as the host. What do you think are the most important things people should be aware of if they go overlanding, or they're planning to go overlanding for the first time? One,
make sure that your vehicle is equipped for it. Again, tire choice is really important, but also just general maintenance. Have the car inspected either by yourself, make sure the oil is changed, make sure all the fluids are topped off, the tire pressures are checked. And 2, make sure to research the area that you plan on going. Understand the terrain that you're going to be in, because then you can equip yourself and your vehicle to be able to manage that terrain. You don't want to get anywhere that you're not prepared for, because then nobody's having a good time.
Yeah, and I would say prepare for and understand the weather that terrain has undergone over the last several weeks, because it could be totally fine if it's had a dry couple of weeks. if it's rained the last 2 weeks, you could be in for a real mess, right?
Yeah, exactly. Weather's definitely something to consider.
Absolutely. What are some other things that people should be aware of when they're thinking of overlanding?
Well, I'd have to say, I mean, really to get yourself started, vehicle choice is important, like we had mentioned. Make sure that you have the proper vehicle for it. Tools, supplies, that's definitely needed. But really, I honestly, Jack, I think that's about it. I mean, that's the great part about this is that it's very attainable for the average camper that wants to get out there with their vehicle, or the automotive enthusiast that wants to get out there with their vehicle and have an adventure and get out in the wilderness. It's probably the least expensive, easily attainable type of off-roading and four-wheeling out there that anybody can enjoy.
Where would you suggest people, obviously we're talking to people across the United States on the show, but are there particular areas or particular trails, particular places that you think are the best to get a taste of overlanding?
I think your state parks are going to be the best bet to start with. Number one, you'll be able to get all the information that you need from state park officials. You can understand the terrain, where you can go, sights to see while you're out there, and that's probably the best place to go. Here on the East Coast, where I am, there's a few places in upstate New York and the Adirondacks that are really beautiful. Up in New Hampshire, where I've been a few times before, there's a lot of great areas. But my recommendation, check your local state parks, check with them, and that's the perfect place to start.
Got it. Any other advice for folks before we let you go, Greg?
No, really. Get out there, get yourself a four-wheel drive vehicle, get some camping supplies, and go give it a shot. It's a ton of fun. It's a great way to get out there. It's a great way to get out in the wilderness, and it's a great way to just start enjoying and using and understanding your vehicle.
If somebody were to go and acquire a vehicle, I guess buy, right? Acquire is such a big word for buying the vehicle. What vehicle would you recommend that they pick if this sounded enticing to them? And it sounds enticing to me. And I've been out there in the woods and in the mud and the dirt, and it still sounds enticing. What would you suggest to them?
There's been a lot of great products put out by auto manufacturers in a few years that are perfectly designed for overlanding. A few that stand out are the new Jeep Gladiator and, of course, the Wrangler. Those are built to go off-road, and even in their stock form are very, very capable. Your average mid-sized trucks, Toyota Tacoma, the new Ford Ranger, the Toyota 4Runner, also very, very capable vehicles right from the factory. And the one that I'm looking forward to personally is the new Ford Bronco that'll be coming out next year, which has got overlanding and off-roading just written all over it. It's just 100% built for it.
It really does. It really does. I've had a chance to drive. I can't talk about driving or the driving. I did in the Bronco Sport. I have not driven the Bronco. Bronco.
I have a lot of questions for you,
But
Jack.
the Bronco Sport, hey, kind of cool. Well, tell us a bit before we let you go, because you are the brand ambassador of CarID.com. Tell us a bit about CarID.com.
So
what's that about?
CarID.com is really your source for anything and everything automotive, from your basic repair parts, standard brake parts and stuff that you need to just repair when your vehicle breaks down, to performance parts and interior accessories, exterior accessories, really anything that you could possibly ever need for your vehicle, car, truck, SUV, it doesn't matter. We stock it.
Sounds terrific. Well, Greg Kopf, thanks so much for being with us. I really do appreciate it. You're the brand ambassador at CarID.com, as I don't have to tell you, and many thanks. It was enjoyable to talk to you.
Jack, thank you so much for having me.
And stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad back with you, and we have a special guest with us, and I say that with some degree of joy because Lauren Fix is with us. She is the car coach, not a car coach, but the car coach, the trademarked car coach. And you've probably seen her on TV, heard her on the radio, read her many, many encyclopedias that she's written about cars. But she's going to talk to us today a bit about car care. We're coming into winter. It's reared its ugly head in a lot of places, including, I think, where Lauren is today. But first, let me introduce Lauren Fix and tell us about car care, would you, Lauren?
Hi, how you doing, Jack? Yeah, it is snowing here. I live in Buffalo. I'm originally from Detroit, and so this is the same ugly weather. Just they like to beat up Buffalo when Syracuse and Albany get much worse weather. But it is lately snowing here, and it's concerning. So that reminds me to do all the same things that the upper half of the country has to do, and that is dealing with the wet and changing weather. That fall brings us going into winter, and we're getting into that time where it's darker earlier. And so you want to make sure you're prepared, not just from a safety standpoint, but also you want to make sure that your car is running properly to get you to where you want to be whenever you need to be. And the most important thing is I tell this to everybody, and they don't think about it this way. Your vehicle, whether you're driving a little Mini Cooper or a big F-150, there's only four things that touch the ground, and that's your tires. And it's actually not the full size of the tire. So when you think, oh, I got these big tires, well, it's not all touching the ground. It's a contact patch about the size of your fist. So that's why it's so important to check your tire pressure once a month. It's actually a really simple skill you should teach all new drivers is how to check tire pressure. It's pretty simple. You just open the driver's door, and inside is a sticker on every vehicle made. And that is the correct tire pressure for your car, because you could have two different Honda Civics from two different years with completely different tire pressures. They're based on trim level. There's all kinds of factors. So that's the correct tire pressure for your vehicle. So if you look at your tires, you don't have to be an expert. However, when you look at the tires themselves and you see that they're bald on one side, or maybe you hear a thumping going on, it's entirely possible you need new tires. However, if you are in weather that is below 40 degrees on a regular basis and you see snow, those all-season tires are only good till 40 degrees. Below that, they get much harder and they no longer grip the roadway. And to give you a good feel, that's sort of like a sneaker. It's great for most of the time, but when the snow starts getting deep and the ice starts showing up, you probably don't want to be in sneakers because you're going to skate all over the place. Like I said, all seasons, you want a winter boot, like a winter tire. So with that thought in mind, you're kind of looking for a tire that either goes across the full range or switch to winter tires. So going across the full range, there's a new tire out from Michelin. It's called the Cross Climate 2. And it's a little bit different because it's designed for the colder temperatures. And that's what you really want. If you say, I have no interest in switching tires, well, then you really want to look for an aggressive tire. This one has a really unique V shape on it. And you can look it up online if you want, or there's an article on my website. And what's neat about this is it actually grips the road when it's icy, when it's snowy, and it'll help push the water and the slush out of the way so that you can get better traction.
Your tire contact patch is, like you say, the size of a fist or the size of a grapefruit, and keeping in touch with the road is very critical, especially as we get into inclement weather that people suffer at various parts of the country. So, right on.
Actually, it's so funny because when it gets cold outside, no one wants to get out of their vehicle to pump gas. Now, if you're lucky enough to live in New Jersey or Oregon, you don't have to. They do it for you. That's a state law. But around the rest of the country, the other 48 states, Shell has a new setup with the Uconnect system. If you have an FCA vehicle, if you have Chrysler product, they have an in-vehicle platform that you can plug in your credit card in advance, and you can actually purchase things through their marketplace. And what's nice about that is you can just press the buttons, tell them what pump you're at, and press the buttons and get out and fill up your tank. It's a lot easier than standing out there plugging in your credit card, waiting for it to approve. It's already done. So this is a new thing that Fiat Chrysler is working on with Shell, and they also have a rewards program. So if you don't have an FCA vehicle, you can go and use their Shell reward program so you can get discounts up to 5 cents a gallon. And that all adds up. Right now, gasoline is low, but it could change at any time. One other thing I did want to mention is, you know how the temperatures get cold? I think one of the biggest things people forget about is when to change their oil. And I always tell people, if you're going to change your oil and you don't know when, check in that book in the glove box that no one ever looks at. It's got a service schedule. It'll tell you the correct type and how often. And I think people forget the how often part because you go, the light on the dash says to. You have to remember, changing your oil is based on mileage, not based on time. So that's an important thing to know. If you are going to change your oil, the best thing you can do for any car, whether it's an old car or a new car, and a lot of the new cars require it, is a full synthetic oil. Quaker State makes a full synthetic oil that gives you better performance in the cold weather, because when it's really severe and really cold, especially if you live in the upper half of the country, starting a vehicle that's not on synthetic could damage your motor. So make sure that you get a full synthetic. Don't go with the blend. it's worth a few extra dollars. That's one of the things I always tell people. And then, of course, don't forget that emergency kit. I can't tell you the emergency kits in their car. I'm like, really? What happens if something happens? Sure, you can call AAA or wherever. But an emergency kit should have, obviously, a set of jumper cables and flashlights, the obvious things. You can buy them prepackaged at any big box store. But I always tell people, toss in a couple stray items that I think you should have. One of them is the Sabre Safe Escape 3-in-1 automotive tool. It's got a seatbelt cutter, a window brake, and it's also got pepper gel. Now, one of the things about having this is if something happens and you're in an accident, sometimes the seatbelts lock. And if you have that in your center console, you'll be glad you do, because you need to get out of the vehicle. And hopefully you never, ever, ever have to use it, but you'll be glad to have it if you do. The last thing is a gift. I mean, everyone's always asking for technology. So it's like, I want something different. And with everybody being home, and then when you get out on the road, there's a lot of bad drivers. I don't know if you've noticed that bad habit. I see a lot of people forgetting to turn their headlights and people doing silly maneuvers. And the newest thing everybody's been asking for is cameras that point out the front, and you just mount them on your dash with a suction cup mount. And I'm thinking, oh, I've never had one, but I've been playing with this Cobra SC201. It captures in full HD, and it has infrared for at night. So if a deer runs out in front of you and you have an accident, you tell your insurance company that, they're like, sure. No, I have video of that. Or somebody hit you at an intersection, I've got video of that. And you'll be glad you have it if something happens. And it's also neat because it stores all the video in the cloud. It's $179. They have them for sale at Best Buy. But I think one of the neat things is, people that love these gadgets. I have friends that just love this stuff. They're already begging for one of these things. So it's something that's a neat gift if you're looking for something different for a car person.
All right, it sounds super cool. I mean, if you're going off road, say, and you want to capture that
True.
kind of stuff, there's just so many uses for that. It seems like a really great thing, yeah. And maybe I'll ask my wife for one of those. For Christmas.
She probably doesn't know what to get you, because when you're a car guy, it's always like, I don't know. What can you use?
Right, yeah. Another necktie? I don't think so. This is not the time for neckties, right?
No. Well, we don't wear ties usually. We don't usually wear ties when we're out in the road.
Right.
So I'm excited for that. And I also have an Alfa Romeo Stelvio, not the quadrifold, unfortunately, but it is an all-wheel drive TI. There's something about that car, I can't explain it. I just love that car. Yeah. And it's so much fun to drive.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's the Italian in you or in somebody that makes it so.
My husband's Italian.
Well, there you go. It's like driving your husband. Yeah, maybe driving him nuts. I'm not quite sure what, but something like that.
I'm sure I do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Lauren Fix, thanks so much for being with us. We really do appreciate it. A lot of great tips on driving in the winter, preparing your car for the winter, and even some Christmas gift tips, unexpected here. So thanks so much for being with us, Lauren Fix, the car coach. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that was our interview with Lauren Fix. She is the car coach, telling us about what you should do to get your car set for winter. It's coming on. It's coming on, especially in Maine, where our co-host Chris Teague resides. Chris, thanks so much for being with us on America on the Road. We appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone for listening to us. If you liked what you heard today and you want to hear more, please hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. Good or bad, hopefully good, though. It will help us continue to grow and get in front of more people so we can continue to do what we're doing and putting out great content for you guys to listen to.
Very, very good. And happy Thanksgiving to you again, belatedly. Many of you are listening to this on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, which is when this initially is airing. But thanks so much for being with us on that. And I'd like to remind you, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, to look for my book, The GR Factor, Unleashing the Undeniable Power of the Golden Rule. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere you buy books, or pretty much everywhere. If it's not in your local bookstore, ask for it, and they can get it for you from E.M. Lancey Publishers. And again, I want to thank Chris Teague for being with us, and I want to thank you, the listening audience, for being with us. And you're the reason we do what we do. So thanks so much for staying with us on America on the Road. And we'll see you again next time when Chris Teague and I join you for another edition of America on the Road.